Hello, I'm Wendy Brockman. Welcome to Denver Decides. Denver Decides is a community partnership dedicated to accessible and transparent elections. The partnership includes the League of Women Voters of Denver, Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, Historic Denver, and is presented by Denver 8 TV. Today we are presenting a candidate forum in anticipation of the municipal election coming up on Tuesday, May 7th. Among other offices, this election includes the candidates vying to represent citizens in City Council District 8. City Council District 8 is located in Northeast Denver. Our format is a pretty standard one. The candidates will have timed opening and closing statements that will be followed by rounds of questions that have been submitted by the organizers of the forum. Since we do have a time limit, we may not get to all of the questions. All of the questions will be answered by the candidates and their responses will be timed. Our timers are out in front where candidates can see them. So let's begin by meeting the candidates vying to represent you on Denver City Council for District 8. The candidates are seated left to right facing the audience in the order that they appear on the ballot. So beginning to my far right is Chris Herndon, Patrick Thibeault, Miguel Ceballos Ruiz, Lamone Knowles, Eric Penn, and Blair Taylor. Let's welcome the candidates. We will begin with 1-minute opening statements from each of the 6 candidates, and we will proceed in ballot order with these statements. So once again, starting at my far right, you have a 1-minute opening statement. Chris Herndon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and speak to you. This job is about one thing, and that is service. And as a veteran, I know what it means to serve. I've proudly served this country for nearly 7 years in the United States Army. I've proudly served Northeast Denver as council member representing District 11, District 8, 2 of those years as council president. And I'm asking for your vote to serve for 4 more years. We've made great strides to tackle head-on the problems of affordability, infrastructure, and sustainability, and I look forward to having a conversation and sharing with you how we want to continue to serve for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Patrick Thibeault.
Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. My name is Patrick Thibeault, and I'm a proud 4th-generation resident of near Northeast Denver. Grew up in a single-parent home in the East Colfax corridor, and so fortunate to have been raised in the hard work and determination of a single mom. And that's led me down a pathway of service to my community. Been a grassroots community organizer, as well as the chief of staff for both the state senator and state representative. One of the things I learned most from my mom is that be a doer, not a talker. I've worked to establish a permanent affordable housing fund statewide. I've occupied a U.S. Senator's office for 36 hours in support of our dreamers. And with that community experience, and I've also been the political action chair for NAACP Denver. I can get to work day one for our neighborhoods.
And now an opening statement from Miguel Ceballos Ruiz.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really good to be here amongst friends at home. I grew up here in Montbello, and this is honestly where my heart is. Montbello is a community that's been through a lot of challenges, and we continue to fight to improve our neighborhood day by day. I know what it is like to have roots here. I am the only immigrant also that is running for Denver City Council right now. I was brought here as a baby, and my family, by 1990, was able to purchase a home in Montbello. So I grew up between Montbello High School and Crown Market, and I really look forward to speaking to you tonight about the changes that I want to bring, and starting with bringing the community back to the table for District 8. Thank you.
All right, now an opening statement from Lamone Knowles.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight. My name is Lamone Knowles. I'm a 2nd-generation Denver native, alumni of Denver Public Schools, Metropolitan State College. I'm also a career federal government employee with the Department of Veterans Affairs. My community organizing work began with ACORN, with the subprime lending and foreclosure campaign, and that's when the housing issue became really acute, and this was back in the early 2000s, and here we are almost 20 years later, and it's even worse than it was. So my focus is going to be on housing and homelessness issues. Thank you.
Now let's hear from Eric Penn.
Yeah. Again, thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. It's a really good honor to speak with you. I moved to Colorado when I was 12. I came because my parents realized that they weren't going to be able to make the living that they wanted for us in the career fields that they loved. My mother is a veteran from the Navy, and my father worked in the food industry. And he ended up taking a job in the oil fields that brought him up to Colorado. And what we still realized when we made it here is that we still couldn't afford living. Even with the money that the oil field was paying at the time, we still faced homelessness, food insecurity, and these are the issues that led me to work in my community when I came back. I've worked and had the opportunity to work with a lot of the champions that I see in this room tonight, so it's a pleasure to speak amongst you, and I hope that we get to some of the important issues. Thank you for your time.
And now with her opening statement is Blair Taylor.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Blair Taylor, and my family and I have lived in Denver for 12 years. I am a twice elected member of the Greater Park Hill Board and a member of the Northeast Park Hill Coalition. This year, I won the J. Carlton Babbs Award and the INC Neighborhood Star Award for my commitment to listen and lead and stand up for my community. I earned a MBA at DU in Strategic Partnerships to ensure that community organizations like these are financially sustainable and they can continue on with their missions. I think that being a representative means having a real connection with your residents, and we need somebody now who can address all of the mismanaged growth. We need a leader who will protect our distinct District 8 neighborhoods and will ensure that their needs are met first. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you, candidates. Now the first of our submitted questions, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer, and we're going to start in reverse order from the opening statement, so we're going to begin with Blair Taylor. In your opinion, has Council District 8 received the same or an appropriate amount of resources from the city as other districts have?
I think that, as I said, District 8 has some very different neighborhoods. Park Hill, Stapleton, Southwest Montbello, and East Colfax. They are diverse, they have very different needs, and we can see just based on their age that the equity that they've received is not the same. Park Hill is 100 years old, Montbello is about 50 years old, Stapleton is only 20 years old. They have gotten a lot more much quicker, and I think that the older the neighborhood, the less that it's received. And we need to do much better. We need to ensure that we have diverse housing stock and developments that come down the line. We need to ensure that public transportation serves the far northeast. We need to make sure that schools and children have the same equity in all community schools, not just charter schools where they automatically get funding. So the answer to the question is that no, I do not think so.
All right, next is Eric Penn. Same question, you have 1 minute.
Yeah. I think this question touches on some of the difficulties that are living in District 8, District 11 as well. We have a lot of what we see as single-family residential. And with that, we haven't seen the investment that comes with it. Our population is growing. We need density, and that density has found itself mostly around downtown and in North Denver. And we've seen a lack of investment in our communities. Right now, what we're seeing the most of is Stapleton's growth, and it's finishing its near end, and then the I-70 project. But those aren't the issues that people are facing on a day-to-day. When you drive through the neighborhoods, you realize very quickly that the streets are not wide enough. There are potholes. Kids aren't having safe routes to schools. Families don't have the community amenities that they used to, that they were familiar with, and that our seniors are being forced out of these communities. We need to invest more resources into the areas of the towns that are not necessarily downtown, that are in our big metro areas, but they're the areas that people want to live and that people intend to raise their families.
All right, thank you. Same question for Lamone Knowles.
I don't believe that Northeast Park Hill or Montbello have the same resources as other parts of the district, mainly because of the lack of amenities, the lack of investments, and the perceived notion that the residents of Northeast Park Hill and Montbello are low income and low voter turnout and don't really matter. But those two neighborhoods in particular were very vital back in the 60s and 70s during the civil rights era, and a lot of the people still remain.
All right, Miguel Ceballos Ruiz, it's your turn to answer that same question.
Yeah, and here in Montbello, as I grew up here, it's always felt like we don't have access to many amenities like the rest of the city does. And I know this is also true in Northeast Park Hill in particular. I know what it is like to grow up in a food swamp and food desert. At 27, I was diagnosed with diabetes. And so in Montbello, it is still a whole lot easier to get unhealthy fast food than it is to get an organic salad, and that is still what we're facing. We have higher density of health concerns also, and right now what we really need is a plan to get us these services. So how are we going to get downtown through the I-70 construction, right? And on top of that, we don't have a walk-in clinic in Montbello, right? There's not a clinic where you can just walk in if you feel like your sugar is too high, if you feel like your blood pressure is too high. Those are the services that we need immediately. And additional, yes, thank you, and that's my time.
That's right. Patrick Tebow, you're up next.
No, I don't feel that all of our neighborhoods are treated equally, especially when just today. So I live on the south part of the district, and to get to downtown on bus, it'd take me about 20, 30 minutes. I went to City of Axon Park earlier this morning, which is off MLK and Birch. Also wanted to take the bus. That took me almost an hour. Took me almost an hour to travel through my own district. So no, we definitely need to improve our options throughout the district and make sure that we have equity in transit, housing, and amenities as well.
Chris Herndon, you're up.
When the voters passed the nearly $960 million bond, almost 10% of that is going to District 8. If you're thinking about transportation, mobility, and infrastructure, bus rapid transit, the additional bike lanes, the additional sidewalks, projects such as the Pauline Robinson Library in Northeast Park Hill will be expanded. So that's one example how we're investing in our city. If you think about our plans that we're doing, we're finishing up the 3-year Denver Right plan where we're having a broad conversation about what we want our city to do. But the city also realized the needs for small area plans. And we started 2 small area plans, and guess where they are? Montbello, East Colfax. First 2 small area plans in District 8. We are focusing on District 8, we're making investments in District 8, and right here in the Montbello community, we're having conversations about adding a affordable housing grocer component right here in Montbello. We are absolutely investing in District 8, and we're going to continue to do so. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next question, and the first to answer will be Eric Penn. The question is, it seems this election has an undertone of old Denver versus new Denver to it. Which do you consider yourself and why?
Yeah, I think it's tough to say which I consider myself. I can understand what the dynamic is, and I think to Blair's point earlier, we're dealing with neighborhoods that come from 3 different generations. We're dealing with 100,000 people in the last 10 years and another 200,000 in the next 10 years is projected. And so there is this pull. I used to tell people Denver has it all. It's a beautiful metropolis that has the plains on one side, it has the mountains on the other. You can go to the theater. We had a number of sports teams that rivaled New York. But now, we're seeing that growth. We're seeing lack of access to those amenities that we once enjoyed. It's getting harder and harder to get to the mountains to ski. It's getting harder and harder to get to your local parks. And so I would say I'm somewhere in the middle. I want to appreciate the things that we had. I want to see those things flourish and be protected, but I know that we need to adjust our direction for the future of what the city is going to become.
All right, next up is Lamone Knowles.
I would say I'm old Denver only because I've been around a long time, longer than most of these guys sitting here. And Denver at the time was very family-oriented. We had neighborhood schools. We had shopping in our areas. We walked. We caught public transportation. We didn't really need to use our cars. But as time went on and the divestment from the neighborhood went on, then the public transportation started contracting. The schools started failing, and so we're flailing right now. But I would say I'm old school because it was good back then.
All right, Miguel Ceballos Ruiz.
Yeah, excellent answer, Lamone. I think, sounding, old school. It really sounds wonderful. I've been here all my life. This is the only home that I've ever known. But there was a moment in which my family were new here, right? And so we, as immigrants, know what it is like to face discrimination and hate head on. And so as an immigrant, I do not hold a xenophobic stance where I say, no, you know what, no new people. We're going to continue to grow. And we need to welcome the people who are going to come into our city and help it become a wonderful place, right? But however, I do tell newcomers that they must learn the history of the spaces that they now occupy. That is extremely important because we've been through a lot in our communities, and that has to be respected.
All right, thank you. Patrick Tebow, you're up next.
I'm both. I'm a fourth generation, again, resident here in Denver. This is where I grew up. I've seen our neighborhoods grow and change. I know what's made our neighborhoods great, and especially in Park Hill, you can find all walks of life, races, backgrounds, creeds, and genders all living on one block, but we're starting to lose that identity. But I'm also a millennial, and so I know the ideas and vision of how we can have forward progress for our city. But the reason why I say both is because that's what our District 8 neighborhoods need, is a vision that unites the history that's made us great, but is welcoming to our new neighbors as well.
All right, Chris Herndon.
Well, I'm sure my 15-year-old daughter will definitely tell you that I'm old because I can't keep up with all the acronyms and her terminologies that she does on a daily basis. But it really is the people that, whether you've been here a day or you've been here for your entire life, you want a safe community. You want access to resources. You want to be able to get to where you go in a short, reasonable amount of time. And that's what we're doing as a city. We know that we have challenges with growth, and that's why we're tackling them head on with our small area plans, with our investment in our infrastructure with the passage of our bond, looking for opportunities to create parks in North Park Hill. So we recognize that there are some challenges, but people want to be in safe, sustainable communities, and they want to grow their families here, and that is exactly what we're doing now and making those investments right here in District 8. Thank you.
All right, Blair Taylor, it is your turn.
Thanks so much. I feel like this is a really interesting question. So I would categorize myself as a new Denverite, although I've been here for 12 years, but I am raising 2 native Denverites. And I think that I want to bring both to the table. Working on community issues for the past 5 years has provided me with the opportunity to meet and learn and have context in our neighborhoods with people who have been here for 30, 40, 50 years. When we talk about naming the park on Fairfax and 28th, it's going to be named for people who have lived here much, much longer than I have. And there's value to that. We need to recognize the history and the character, and that's what makes District 8 so great, is these distinct neighborhoods. And I want to raise my children to respect that. I think there's a lot of value, and there are a lot of lessons to be learned.
All right. Next is our third question for the candidates, and this time we're going to begin with Lamone Knowles. Here's your question. District 8 is home to some of Denver's largest swaths of pre-World War II homes, but there's been controversy over what areas to protect. What specific actions will you take to help resolve these conflicts and identify successful preservation strategies?
So South Park Hill probably has the oldest and largest properties in Northeast Denver. And there was a campaign about historic versus non-historic because some of the newcomers want to split their lots, and that totally disrupts the character of the community. I really don't have a strategy per se because I need to talk more to the community to find out what they want. So that's going to be a work in progress.
All right. Miguel Ceballos Ruiz, your turn.
Yes, as we move forward in the construction of the bus rapid transit along Colfax, I feel that that is a corridor of opportunity where we should be putting a lot of the low-income and affordable housing, because it's right on transit, and people, who don't afford to have a car can live there. I really want to ensure that that is what happens there. We don't want that corridor to become exclusive, where it's nothing but luxury. This is what we've been seeing throughout Denver, where we don't afford to buy into these new communities we are creating. And so I feel that, yes, we have to put new neighborhoods along, where there are older neighborhoods. And there does have to be a protection of the character, especially right next to Park Hill, because it's beautiful. I love to drive down 17th Avenue, right? But there's also areas where housing has to be a priority. And I really believe that instead of pushing all the affordable housing way out here to Green Valley Ranch, where it comes with its own challenges to access, we must really be conscious about where we place that.
Your time is up, Mr. Ruiz. Thank you. Patrick Tebow, you're up next.
Yeah, this is a fantastic question and so prevalent for our District 8 neighborhoods. I was actually just speaking with a gentleman a couple days ago, and he's lived in Park Hill for over 30 years. And he pointed to the middle of the block and said, look over there. They're popping the top, and they're going to sell it for $1.2 million. And it's right across the street from another house that's sold for $1.2 million. These are the types of things that are pushing our neighbors out of the communities and homes that they've lived in for generations. And so one of the things that I would immediately do is work with our neighbors, especially to help them understand the planning and review process, to make sure that they can make good quality decisions when they're talking about refurbishment and construction of homes, to make sure that they're able to preserve the character of the neighborhood, but then also make sure that they're not pricing out their neighbors.
All right, thank you. Chris Herndon, you're next.
Yeah, so the City and County of Denver currently has a landmark preservation policy and ordinance. So if individuals are interested in designating a home as historic, whether they're being their own or another one, there's a process that we can go through that, generally speaking, does a good job. But as a city, we realized we could make it better. And so we're going through a process right now to strengthen that policy. But generally speaking, the best way to do that is to bring the community members together. And we had some circumstances at 19th and Albion about a house that an individual wanted to buy that the neighbors felt had some historic context to it. So we brought the parties together to have a conversation, and we're almost to a point where we believe we have a resolution. And that's exactly how you do it. Bring the parties together and say, what can we do so that all parties can be successful? And we're doing that now in the city, and that's why we haven't seen some drastic historic battles that you see in other parts, because we're bringing the community members together.
All right, next up, Blair Taylor.
I think one of the most special parts about Park Hill is just when you drive down these big boulevards with these amazing homes that have these really intricate architectural elements. Montview and 17th are both on the National Historic Register. That's really important for us as a city, that we show that we value history and culture. And when we have seen the proposal of subdivision of lots, the subdivision of the lots doesn't add affordable housing. It just adds another $1.5 million house and further gentrifies the neighborhoods. We need to preserve a diverse housing stock, and we're running out of open space. We can't just sell it off, allow development, and assume that it's going to be for regular people, regular working people, because it's not. We live now in an environment when real estate speculation is fine.
I apologize. Next up is Eric Penn.
Yeah, I have to say, I really appreciate when I see developers, individuals, whoever it might be, refurbishing the existing structures of buildings. I think it's one of the great things that we have here in District 8 is the old airport tower that's now a Punch Bowl Social. I think you see it in other parts of town, but I think we can do a better job of encouraging people to take that route rather than to tear down and rebuild. I think the city has to bolster its programs that invite people to come in and receive services that can help before their homes fall into disrepair, before we see any forms of blight. We can do work on those properties and maintain them in their neighborhoods. Along with that, we do still have to have growth. The blueprint plan right now talks about ADUs across the city. Part of that restores some of our historic nature. It gets those carriage homes and those granny flats back into areas where they normally or previously existed. And this can help address some of the housing crisis that we're seeing at this time. But it does need to be a mix. I agree. It has to be a conversation in the community. People have to come together, and they have to understand what it is when we compromise the future and the past and how we can come for the best future.
All right, thank you. Another question for our candidates from our forum partners for City Council District 8. This time we begin with Miguel Ceballos Ruiz. Here's the question. Please tell the audience about one civic project you've worked on that involved meaningful community engagement, real community investment, and a successful outcome for all the stakeholders involved.
Yes, of course. You know, I do play a small role, and I'm going to be humble about that, with the construction of the new Montbello Organizing Committee's Cultural Hub, which is going to be centered right here in our community, and it's going to help solve our problem, our lack of access to a healthy food source. And that is going to be monumental for our community. And I've been an active member, you know, from the beginning, and I'm going to see it through for sure. That is going to be transformational in the sense that we're not going to, that southwestern part of Montbello is no longer going to be a food desert. And so that is going to allow us to live healthier lifestyles, to make our community a whole lot more dependent on traveling outside, which is going to help with the traffic as well, right? And I'm extremely proud of those people who are leading that on behalf of the Montbello Organizing Committee.
All right, thank you. Same question now for Patrick Thibeault.
One of the things that I'm most proud of from my work at the state legislature was working to create better rental protections for victims of sexual assault and stalking. It's already so difficult for individuals to move around as is and be able to have the fortitude to move about our city. But just imagine what that would be like, to be a person who was victimized in your building by either your landlord or someone that you thought was your neighbor. And so I'm very proud that I was able to make sure that victims were able to put together good safety plans for themselves in these situations and not have to feel the financial burdens of moving around Denver.
Chris Herndon.
Thank you. The first one that comes to mind is the Punch Bowl Social. When I was first elected in 2011, the tower had sat empty for nearly 20 years, and I was determined to find an adaptable reuse for it. So we created a community group of stakeholders from all throughout Northeast Denver. What do you want to see of the beloved tower? And we had brainstormed so many different ideas. I remember I went to an elementary school where the third graders had a list of what they wanted to become, and I'm sorry we couldn't create a spy house out of it. But we had these ideas, and we realized we wanted something iconic. We wanted something that would bring the community together from all over the place, and the idea of Punch Bowl Social came up. And I scheduled a meeting with Robert Thompson, the CEO of Punch Bowl. He came into my office, we talked a little bit, and I just poised the question, what do you think of the tower? And from that one question, he leaned back, he's like, well, let's have a conversation. We had another, and right now if you go to Central Park and MLK, you have the opportunity to have a great, beautiful restaurant and meal that reflects the great historic nature of that tower and also gives you a great experience. So that's something I'm really proud of that we were able to accomplish as a community.
Thank you, Mr. Herndon. Blair Taylor, same question.
One of the most recent projects I worked on was the Fairfax Pocket Park. And what happened was that a developer came in, they bought the entire east side of Fairfax and requested from City Council that they do a land swap of a pocket park to then move over to a sort of an amenity in this development. I take my job very seriously as a representative, and we decided that it would not be right to just have this park be given away without the community's voice. So I and a handful of other community members flyered the blocks surrounding the park and 28th and Fairfax, and just brought them in and said, we need you. We want to know what you think about this park. What do you need? This is for us. It's public land, and you need to have a say. It was an amazing experience. We had a three-part design.
All right, thank you. Eric, it's your turn now.
Yeah. When you hear Cherry Creek Sneak or, Taste of Colorado, you can think about specific areas in the city, and that is what we are trying to do here in Montbello. So with Montbello Alive, which is a cultural celebration that started with the 50th anniversary of our neighborhood, we're working with groups across the neighborhoods to try and create that same exact feeling, where we're embracing kids and the arts, healthy eating and living. We're trying to bring communities together, and we've had our hardships. It's what community is about. It's about working with one another, understanding what people's ideas are, how we can make those into realities, and where is it that we have to compromise. And we're dealing with that now. I want to invite everybody out in September to come to the event and see what it is that it means to be a community, to work with one another, to put your hands in, get dirty, have disagreements, but in the end, hopefully come up with something that is what the people wanted and represents the community.
Okay, Lamont, same question about a civic project.
So I'm the current president of City Park Friends and Neighbors, and we were able to successfully bring the issue of parks and open space to the community at large. I was one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit to save City Park Golf Course. Even though we lost the lawsuit, we were able to galvanize the community. We had many rallies, we had public events, and we were able to educate the public about parks and open space.
All right, the next question is called the Big Three. We're going to begin with Patrick Tebow. What are the three biggest problems facing District 8 that you would pay immediate attention to if elected or reelected?
So number one, affordable housing, all income levels. Transportation policy that focuses on how we move people and not just creating more lanes, and creating a strong local talent pipeline from jobs from skilled trades to STEMs.
Chris Herndon.
Certainly, I think we're definitely recognizing the challenges of growth, and we're addressing those problems right now with our holistic Denverite plan and two specific small area plans that are impacting the district right now, Montbello, East Colfax. Secondly, it's affordability, affordable housing. We have built affordable housing in every neighborhood in this district, for rent in Park Hill, for home ownership in Stapleton, for our seniors here in Montbello, and more coming along the East Colfax corridor. And lastly, it's in our investment in our infrastructure. We're going to need to find smarter ways to move people out of their single occupancy vehicles. So we have the bus rapid transit coming, we have additional bike lanes coming, and we have sidewalks that we're putting throughout the city. So those are the three challenges, but more importantly, those are the things we are addressing right now as a city.
Okay, Blair, what are your three big three?
The first one would be traffic. We have, even just getting over here today was a massive mess. And if you can imagine if somebody was relying on public transportation, all of the stops and how long it would actually take them to get from point A to point B. So I think that we need to do a better job ensuring that people can get where they need to go, whether that's using local or express bus routes. And then the second thing that would be is housing. We have lost so much of our diverse housing stock in District 8. It is almost unrecognizable. Just yesterday, I was at, one of the first slot homes that Park Hill will now have. And it's not only not affordable, but it doesn't look like anything else in the neighborhood. And then the third thing would be, I have young children, so I always think about equity and kids and safe routes to school.
All right, Eric Penn.
Yeah, my first is going to be housing. I know people in this community feel it. People up here at these tables know it. And thinking about when we first get into office right now, it looks like there's going to be an economic downturn coming up soon. So one of the first things we need to focus on, along with the spectrum of housing, is on foreclosure protections. We need to ensure that if that happens, if there is a downturn, that we can keep people in their homes. We know that that's cheaper than losing them. And if we do, in fact, lose them, then we need to move those into affordable housing. Secondly, I'm going to talk about transportation. We've heard already that we know we need to move people in a smarter, easier way, but we also know that it's the small things. Our streets right now are littered in potholes. I hit one on my way here. Some of the other ones you see where they're pouring asphalt into concrete, which is not a long-term solution. And so it's about how do we actually maintain the infrastructure that we've invested in. And lastly, it's about safe and healthy neighborhoods. It's about access to green space. It's about officers using community policing. It's about people have access to healthy groceries and living in their neighborhoods. Thanks.
All right, Lamont, your turn.
So My big three involve social justice issues, the biggest one being homelessness. 70% of African American men experience homelessness at least once in their lifetime. A lot of the homeless men you see on the streets are veterans who, for whatever reason, can't access the type of housing they need, not to mention the services and the jobs that they need. The second issue is housing. Affordable and low-income housing are two different things. Affordable is you have to credit qualify, but low income, Denver doesn't really have a plan for low-income housing. And then thirdly, our seniors never expected to be gentrified out of their neighborhoods and out of their homes, and they need protections as well from what's happening in our communities.
Okay, Miguel?
Yes, of course. So yeah, housing, low-income housing, affordable housing, and particularly the displacement of our communities, right? I think that it's unjust that now that we have made our communities these desirable places to live, we have no options but to leave. We really need to be helping the people who want to remain here and stop making it so expensive for people to remain here. Stop increasing the property taxes and coming up with new creative fees, the stormwater fee. We also shouldn't be charging seniors as the conversation moves forward in pay-as-you-go trash collection. I don't think seniors should be charged for their trash service. The traffic. Coming here is hard. It is, Blair, and you guys joining us from Park Hill. We go through this every single day as Montbello and Far Northeast Denver residents. It's extremely hard to get to the rest of the city, and it impacts our upward mobility seriously, and we really need to address that. I think that a free circulator bus to get us onto the A line and onto the bus rapid transit should be the conversation we should be having on community right now.
All right, our next question, the big audacious goal. We're going to begin with Chris. What is your big audacious goal for the District 8 in the next 4 years?
It's to continue the plans that we're doing. If you think about all the challenges, I didn't have the opportunity to talk about homelessness. District 8 has created hundreds of beds for our homeless individuals and specialized for the different segments. 150 beds for women with Catholic Charities, 228 beds for men through Denver Rescue Mission, and the emergency shelter is in District 8 as well. So I haven't had the opportunity to talk about homelessness, so I'll use it for this particular example. And a lot of our homeless work. So it's about creating more affordable housing that we're doing throughout the entire area. So my big audacious goal is to continue to support our most vulnerable, and that's through more beds for those experiencing homelessness, more services, and increasing our affordable housing stock in District 8.
Okay, Blair. I have a lot of big goals for District 8. I think one of them is just a basic principle of ensuring that the people who live in District 8 know what's going on. We end up, for the most part, hearing what plans are happening in the city, and we need to ensure that because it's such a large district, that you have the information first. If there are plans coming down the pipeline, then you should hear them and you should have a say in what happens. So how do we conquer something like that? One way would be to have satellite city council offices in each neighborhood. So you have a specific contact who understands your neighborhood and what your needs are. You know, a lot of times calling to 311, you may forget about whatever you've called about in the issue, and you maybe aren't going to follow up because you don't want to sit on 311 for a long time. So having somebody that you could talk to regularly who understands and has these information.
All right, thank you. Eric, you're up next.
Yeah, you know, I think it's strange that an audacious plan would be about connecting with the neighborhoods. So I'll open by saying, in our first 100 days, I intend to pull all the 311 data from our district to understand what our community has been telling the city they want to see and how we can respond to it. And I would intend to continue that process so people understand that their calls aren't just going to one area and being fixed, that they're coming to your city council person and we're going to follow up on those. I also think that when we're talking about transportation, I think it's not too audacious to say if the city is going to have its own metro transit district, that we need rapid transit that runs every 10 minutes within a 10-minute walk of every house. That seems like a pretty good plan to me, and I hope that we can get there in the next 4 years. District 8 has a lot of arterial roads that we can run buses up and down, and when we're talking about availability, I think it's there. We just have to make that push and ensure that we get that kind of investment here in District 8.
Okay, Lamont.
I think our seniors deserve some attention. Number one, they're active voters. Number two, they know the community. And so I think increasing senior support services on our community. A lot of our seniors are veterans, they're federal government employees, they're teachers, they're professional folks. So I think they need our time and our attention to make things nice for them as they go into their retirement.
Okay, Miguel?
The transformation that I want to see is I don't want people to have to take the hard decision of leaving our communities. I want them to be able to grow here and set roots here, and their children to be able to grow and set roots here. And I really want to start attacking the systems, the structures that we have in place that provide inequities for us. When we start looking around as to who has and who doesn't have, usually those who don't have just happen to be people of color. Why is that? That's by design. How do we attack that at the city council level? I really feel that we have to get serious about this. Social justice issues, right? And I also want to be mindful that we have to have environmental protections as we move forward to the huge construction project of I-70. They're going to be digging up Superfund sites. How is the city going to protect us from breathing in those harmful carcinogens? We really have to be serious about that. Thank you.
And finally, Patrick.
To finally bring a real solution to Quebec. I think that that's one of the biggest things that has been kicked down the road for a number of years throughout the district, and especially District 8. We've had a study to have a study to have a study, and we're wasting your taxpayer money. And the longer we wait, the more we're pricing ourselves out of real solutions for Quebec Street.
All right, you guys ready for the lightning round? Can we handle it?
Ready.
Okay. This is where our candidates are going to be asked several quick questions, and they can only answer with a yes, no, or pass. No expanding. Yes, no, or pass, okay? So we're going to return to ballot order and begin with Mr. Herndon and go down the line, okay? So, do you get your news from a traditional newspaper? That is one printed on paper.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Should the city promote the use of taxpayer money to put a dome on Mile High Stadium in order to attract the Super Bowl or other big sporting events to Denver?
No.
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 No dome. Have you ever missed the opportunity to vote in a local, regional, or national election?
No.
Never.
Yes, I have.
No.
No.
Yes.
Should Larimer Square undergo major remodeling to allow for new high-rises and the possible demolition of some of the historic buildings?
No.
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 Have you ever attended the National Western Stock Show?
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
There's nothing to be ashamed of here. All right, in the last 30 days, have you used mass transit, a bike, or walked for business purposes or to get to work?
30 days. No.
Yes, just today.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If elected or re-elected, will you introduce an ordinance barring fracking in Denver?
No.
Yes.
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 Do you or any family member own a licensed firearm?
Yes.
No.
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 Okay. Have you attended your neighborhood association meeting in the last 6 months?
Yes.
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 Okay. In the 5 years since it was legalized, have you personally tried any of the various products offered by recreational marijuana stores?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
I better not.
No.
No.
Okay.
Oh, we're the only one.
Should the city of Denver create a mechanism that would hold the mayor more accountable?
Yes.
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 All right. Do you see a new political party forming in Denver around anti-growth?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
No?
No.
No.
Okay. That wasn't a trick question.
Yeah.
Okay, our final question. If you were not running for office, is there someone sitting at the table that you'd vote for?
Pass.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Shall we have them reveal who it is? Or
Yeah.
That's not a yes/no question.
All right, let's give them a round of applause for the lightning round. They handled the pressure beautifully. All right, so now we're going to do some one-on-one questions. It's a chance for the candidates to, pose questions to each other. So you can select an opponent, ask them a question, and they will have 1 minute to respond. So we're going to begin with Chris. You can ask your opponents a question, and whoever he chooses has 1 minute to answer.
I'll ask Lamone if you would give your thoughts on Initiative 300.
I support the right to rest, mainly because the issue of homelessness has been on the table. The Denver Road Home was supposed to be an answer. It was a 10-year program where the city collected meter money to fund the program, and then after Mayor Hancock was elected, that program just kind of went away. So until we have a solution to homelessness, it should be in our faces every day.
Okay. Patrick, you can ask a question.
Councilman Herndon, in the past 4 years, you've voted and you've approved 338 acres of suburban subdivided plats in District 8 alone. In a time where medium-dense development that's coupled with the ability to have walkable amenities and also fixed transit, do those votes support the efforts to create better grocery options in Montbello or the redevelopment of East Colfax?
So every vote that I do, I believe, supports creating more resources to our city. The biggest vote, I think, was encouraging everyone to support our bond initiative. So when we're doing that, we're making investments in our city, working with the Montbello Organizing Committee about having a grocer here in the Montbello community and the dollars that our city have invested. So every decision, every vote that I make believes moves us to better resources, better equity, and better services in the district.
Okay. Miguel, you may ask a question.
Yes, I wanted to ask Blair Taylor, why do you oppose overturning the camping ban in Denver?
I oppose it because my concerns are around solutions, and it doesn't provide real solutions. We need housing. We need funding, and the funding that has gone towards the opposition of 300 should have been put back right into service providers. The day after the Homeless Leadership Council put out their statement, I was at St. Francis Center talking to Tom Loers about how they felt. What did they need? And they told me that they want to expand their services. And this doesn't provide solutions. We don't need any more Band-Aids. We need progress. We need answers, and we need to move forward. And that's why.
Okay. Lamone, you may ask a question.
Councilman Herndon, the Fairfax Park issue was kind of controversial, particularly because the developer had informed you that he was of his intentions that were not shared with the community until after the plans were laid out with community planning. If you had to do over again, how would you approach that interaction with the community differently?
Well, I would first say I don't believe that that was controversial. I had to go through my emails regarding the 29th and Fairfax operation because someone submitted a Colorado Opens Request Act, and I realized that the community members were in support of that 3-1 in courts of the land swap. But I will also say when I was first approached by HM Capital in their interest in doing a land swap, that was in September of 2018. 2016, and I encouraged them to reach out to Parks and Recs as the landowner, and then also let's make sure you report back to the community. It was either January or February of 2017 when they were at the Greater Park Hill meeting talking to the community about the proposed land swap. So one, I know from my response and from getting the impact from the community that it was something that they were in support of, and they did come to the RNO to make sure that the community members were aware of it and to get their thoughts on it throughout the process.
Okay, Eric, do you have a question?
Yeah, this is a question for Chris. So there have been a lot of accusations, some of them seeming more founded recently with news articles around the city doing business with bad actors. And so my question is, I've heard from a lot of union members, and this ranges from not collecting the appropriate amount of taxes to allowing contractors business opportunities that they possibly shouldn't have gotten, including wage theft. How is it that what would you say the city is doing well, and what can the city do better, and why has the city not made those steps currently?
Well, I got to give credit to Auditor O'Brien for that is his role in seeing when workers aren't paid the appropriate amounts. And when he does an audit and he makes recommendations that we as a city can make a difference in our rules and ordinance, that's something we absolutely take into account and do. So I believe that we are doing a good job when we realize as a city, hey, there are some things that we're doing better, and we'll make sure that we do that.
Blair, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm going to ask my question to Eric. Currently, there are no regulations or policies about developer or lobbyist donations to City Council, especially during rezoning processes. Do you think that we need some regulations surrounding this, and what would that look like, or why?
Yeah, I'm a firm supporter in 2E that just passed recently about campaign finance reform. And so I truly believe that we need to get big money and dark money out of our elections. I would look closer into what that fully will entail when it comes to lobbyists and future forward donations, especially when they're timed. But I'm a fan of any effort that we can help get big money out of the voice, and we can get more of our constituents and the residents' voices involved in politics.
All right, once again, the candidates are going to have another opportunity to ask each other questions, and we're going to go in ballot order. So we're going to start with Chris, if you have another question for someone.
Oh, another question?
Yes, if you have a question for someone, for an opponent.
Oh, okay. I'll certainly, I want to continue the conversation about 300 because I think that that's really important, the issue. I'd love to get Patrick's thought on Initiative 300.
I'm voting in favor of Initiative 300, and here's why. And so the opposition campaign slogan is because we can do better. Well, I'm voting in favor of 300 because we haven't done better. As a council, they aggressively worked to put the camping ordinance on the books, and now we're leaving it up to voice of the people to make sure if we want to repeal it. That's cowardice legislative action, and not allowing or not really making sure that you're able to make sure that that you're standing up for the folks in your community. I would rather see, it costs $100 a day to house an individual in city jail. I would rather see your taxpayer dollars going to make sure that we're actually creating better temporary and permanent supportive housing for our underserved populations, and not going to empower our city jails.
All right, and Patrick, you now have an opportunity to ask a question if you like.
Chris, please tell us your stance on 300.
Thank you. Initiative 300 doesn't put one person in a house. The solution to homelessness is to create housing. And that's what we're doing in District 8, as I talked about. In every neighborhood in District 8, housing is coming. But that doesn't even talk about the Affordable Housing Fund to make sure that we're supporting the nonprofit developers, $300 million over 10 years, having the dollars in place, the creation of the Legal Defense Fund to help those if you have an issue with your landlord and you need services. The city is creating a legal defense for you to be able, if you can't afford it. That's how we help people get out of homelessness. 300 doesn't do that. It makes our parks more vulnerable, it makes our right-of-way more vulnerable, and that's why I'm voting against it.
Miguel, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question for Chris. You know, in this age of Donald Trump, the Latino community and the immigrant community have really received a lot of hate. One of the things that the city of Denver did was pass a bill for which you were absent, and then a second bill in which $200,000 were allocated to the legal protection of immigrants. Why were you against that initiative?
So simply because I was not present doesn't mean I was absent. We actually vote on bills twice. You do
Okay.
first reading for publication
And
and
how did you
second for vote. And so on first reading, I did vote in support of those. And I'll also talk about, as a city, we've done numerous things to the Trump administration. Even this week, for example, the mayor sent a letter to Attorney General Barr about those in the immigrant community. If you work in the marijuana industry, which is a legal industry here in our state, the Trump administration is considering to take away their legal status. And the mayor sent a letter to the District Attorney Barr saying that is not something that we support. And though the mayor didn't ask council for their opinion, that is absolutely something that I support.
Why did you vote against the $200,000 legal defense fund?
Only one question.
That was the question. You didn't answer it.
All right, go ahead and continue, Chris.
When I was absent, you can't vote if you're absent, but we vote for bills twice, and so first reading for publication, I was there. There's not a bill that support our immigrant community that I voted against.
All right, Lamone, do you have a question?
I have a question for Blair. So, by me growing up in Park Hill, I grew up around diverse populations. And the diversity is starting to go away in Park Hill and in Montbello. So, what type of neighborhood did you grow up in terms of diversity?
I grew up all over the country, actually. I was born in California. Then my parents moved to Montana. My father passed away, and we moved to New York, where my mother's family was from. I went to college in Georgia, and then I moved back to New York, and then to Colorado. So I grew up kind of a little bit of a latchkey kid, and I think that's why I value community, because I think of it as my family, and I want to be your best representative, and I want to make sure that you have what you need, because at the end of the day, I need you just as much as you need me. And I am willing to work very hard for you. I will work till the end of the days. My phone is always on, and that's who I am.
Eric, do you have a question?
Yeah. This question's for Patrick. So I'm curious, Patrick, if you could only serve on one committee on City Council, what would that be, and how would that affect your priorities for your term?
So right now I'm trying to, it's almost like trying to pick between which kid I like most. But I would like to serve on housing and homelessness, so we can delve deeper into actually creating solutions for issues like Initiative 300, and actually see good solutions move through the legislative process.
Okay, Blair, do you have a question?
I'm going to ask Lamone. So City Council voted themselves a raise on the third day of the teacher strike. If they hadn't done that, where do you think that money should go and why?
That money, I believe, should go into a community fund, maybe for the RNOs, so they can do more outreach, have more meetings and public events where they're educating the community about what they do.
All right, that brings us to the end of our Q&A segments, and we're now going to move to closing statements. All right, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement, and we're going to do reverse order from the opening statements, which means we will begin with Blair Taylor. You have 1 minute for a closing statement.
So thank you again so much for having me. The mayor and city council really set the tone of our city. Right now, we've had a lot of development, and our infrastructure, our open space, our schools have not kept pace. It is time to elect new leaders. We've had the same leaders for 8 years, and now we need new people who have worked on the ground. I believe if you have not fought for your community on their needs, then you cannot lead them into their next best stage of life. I have worked on affordable housing at 34th and Albion. I have advocated for a truly public pocket park at 28th and Fairfax. And right now I'm working on my second round of safe routes to school. This is all as a resident. We should not have to work this hard for our neighborhoods. We need representatives who will work for us, who will give us whatever we need and the resources.
All right, a closing statement now from Eric Penn. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. And thank everyone for being here. When I get involved in the community, it's for one thing. It's for the people. And we have a thing in social work. We have about two tenets I want to talk about. One is about creating space for the community to solve their problems. And the other is about putting yourself out of work, right? Hopefully we don't need social workers, but unfortunately we do. And so these are the things that drive me in the work that I do in the community. It's about how do we create space for the community to solve the problems that they're facing. We don't need solutions from other areas because we know what we're dealing with, we know how we need to solve it, and what we need is the opportunity, the resources, the funding, and attention necessary to allow the community to solve those problems. So that is why I am running for City Council, is to help create that space for you, for the communities, for the RNOs, for all the residents, to live in a city that you want to live in for the future forward. So I ask for your vote on May 7th. You can find more of my information on my website, Penn for Denver, and thank you again for being here.
Now a closing statement from Lamone Knowles.
Well, thank you for listening to us tonight. This was a very good forum. I think this is an exciting time. In spite of the challenges that we face, the fact that we had 63 community members step up to the plate to run for office citywide, to me, is really exciting. Watching the debates, hearing what the different perspectives indicates that there's a lot of community interest in what's going on in the city. So I would like to continue that momentum when you vote for me for City Council. Thank you.
Okay. Miguel Ceballos Ruiz, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me today. My name is Miguel Ceballos Ruiz, and I'm running for Denver City Council District 8. Right now in Denver, we're experiencing a time of extraordinary growth and wealth. Yet, it seems to be that those of us who are working every single day to get our families by are not being raised in the same way that other residents are. We've been left behind. It seems at some points that our boats are anchored to the bedrock. Is this really as good as it gets for working families in Denver? I don't believe so. And I really believe that we need new, bold leadership that will take Denver in that direction. I really want to concentrate on helping find solutions for displacement, right? I think it is unjust that people are being displaced out of our communities. And that is why I'm running for Denver City Council, miguelfordenver.com. And thank you so much for your time this evening.
Patrick Thibeault.
Thanks again, everybody, for coming out this evening. One of the biggest steps in the legislative process is showing up, and you all have taken that big first step. Before I ever came to ask all of you for your vote, my community work has been asking the question, are you registered to vote? Did you get your ballot in? Can you come to this community meeting on Saturday and talk about the important issues? But in addition to that community work, I've already been working at the state level on the important policy discussions that we're having statewide that Denver is trying to adopt and create models for. I have the community passion, experience, and history, but I also have the political skills to get to work day one, and that's why I'd be honored to have your support this May 7th. Thank you very much.
Okay, Chris Herndon.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you and share our ideas. It is about service. We recognize the challenges that Denver are facing, and we are tackling them head on. Affordability, affordable units throughout the entire city. Sustainability, expanding of composting. Infrastructure, bus rapid transit, sidewalks, bike lanes, coming to our community right now. I ask for your vote so that we can continue the good work that is moving forward. I'm a veteran. I know what it means to serve. I have been serving my entire adult life. District 8 is my community. I live in Stapleton. My church home is in Montbello. My sister-in-law lives in East Colfax. My daughter went to school in Park Hill. When I'm thinking about District 8, this is my community. It is who I am. I'm asking for your vote. It would be an honor to serve you for 4 more years. HerndonForDenver.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, candidates. And to our fabulously quiet audience, now it's your chance to make some noise for your candidates. Thank you to all of you for being a part of this process. It's great to see such a big, crowded room out there. And also thanks to our Denver Decides partners, which include Interneighborhood Cooperation, the League of Women Voters of Denver, Historic Denver, And Denver Decides is presented by Denver 8 TV. We hope we've given you a fair look at each candidate vying to represent Denver residents living in Council District 8. For complete election information online, go to denverdecides.com. I'm Wendy Brockman. Thanks for watching.